Ay, ay, ay. I have to be, I'll tell you, I don't agree with Jim Cornette on a lot of things, but man, I am definitely on board with his view of this whole event and many others too. Steve, I really, honestly, I think this was the worst idea in professional wrestling for lots of reasons, and we will get down and talk about them. But my goodness, being refreshed with all of what happened at this debacle. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. I can't imagine. I mean, I understand when it was presented and you're like, man, that's an interesting idea. But then when you start thinking about what are we doing here, somebody would have had some sense to say, whoa, whoa, whoa. And it should have been Vince McMahon because, of course, he was the one in charge of it all. But it seems like, he was all in. And then there had to be a point where he's like, oh, man, this is a disaster, but we can't stop. We can't stop the train. We got to somehow get it to the station. And from start to finish, it was a terrible, terrible journey. My God.
It's funny is I never thought it was bad while watching it as a viewer at the time. But then as time goes on, all these websites, all these articles, all these podcasts about Brawl for All, and someone breaks down the points, you're like, it's a great idea on paper for mid-carders who have nothing going on. But it's a terrible idea because everyone seems to have gotten hurt from this event. And the big question I want to ask for you in the beginning is, we are watching a predetermined sport. Stone Cold Steve Austin beating up The Undertaker. Predetermined sports. We know the endings. We don't know the endings of the Brawl for All. So is it strange for you, who worked there, seeing shoot fights in a ring, but yet after that, now you're going to see Steve Austin run down and beat up Dude Love?
Well, and really, you kind of captured it there in a sense, like you're saying, predetermined. People used to ask me all the time about, how many people that you would talk to, that you knew deep down, or when it really came down to it, that they always knew that it was predetermined. Right. I agree. I hate when people use the word fake or say something like that, because there's nothing fake about professional wrestling. Get your ass in a ring and take a few bumps, and then I want to talk to you.
Right.
But the fact that, yes, it's predetermined, but these guys are tremendous athletes. They take unbelievable abuse to their bodies physically. We've discussed this many, many times. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if you were actually going in there and they're trying to have a league like this now with the real wrestling, it's a whole different animal. Where these guys were, in my eyes, just really gifted professional stuntmen. And, as we say that, okay, they go in there, they know what's going to happen. But when you go in there with the, just like you do say in a boxing match where it's a shoot, mm-hmm. That is a whole other skill. And so you talk about these tough guys, and if you've ever seen a bar fight or something, they're not pretty and they don't last long. And it's usually one guy gets in a good punch, the guy's out. Or, fighting dirty, or they're just crawling on the ground and just clawing and scratching. It's just not, what you determine to be a sport by any mm-hmm. measure. But there is the element of, what are we doing here? Because in fights, people get hurt. That's just, even with a, sanctioned guys that are skilled with gloves on, you see what these guys look like after a fight. And they many times takes weeks to recover just to get back to where some level of being able to have some cognitive abilities. But to have these guys go in there was just ridiculous, to think that these guys could go in. And a lot of them certainly were legitimate tough guys. Oh, yeah. But I'm thinking also as a fan, well, okay, if we're looking for the toughest guy in the WWE, well, why isn't Stone Cold in this? Why isn't the Rock in this? No, it ain't touching those guys. Mm-hmm. It's these guys that that are willing to risk it all because of whatever's going on in their career. They feel like they got one foot out the door. They're not getting the push that they expected, and at least this is going to get me some notice.
Yeah.
But the idea behind it, because doing something like this, and like I said, I started by talking about how most people know that professional wrestling is predetermined. They knew it all along. You've got the people that small percentage of people that, they just refuse to think anything else. It's real. It's the whole deal. But the vast majority of people. So you're going to put these guys in a situation where they could legitimately, because it's going to be this shoot fights, get hurt. And if they lose, you expose them as not being what you've billed them as. I want to believe it. But if I see him get his ass knocked out in the ring and he is out cold and he's like, his eyes are crossed, am I going to think of that guy the same way ever again?
No.
Well, you're going to remember that. And so it wasn't even so much when these guys getting hurt, and like Dr. Death was out for months and was never really recovered. But he even talks about, with interviews afterwards, that he had, an injury to his leg that stayed with him forever. But more than that is that it killed careers because the illusion was shattered.
Yep.
And the fact that someone didn't figure this out early on, and it wasn't just one, it's like every one of these guys that lost some shine from their career. Some part of it was taken away from them, and nobody was thinking that going in because they probably thought, maybe being tough. They'd been in a lot of bar fights. They'd been able to take people out. Maybe they had a little more bluster in the ring. They think that, like, if I know that this guy's working with me, but if I really wanted to do this, I could. I'm that skilled now. And you get in there, and what's one of Mike Tyson's most famous sayings is, everybody's, basically a tough guy. Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth, and that's the wake up call. But, what a disaster overall. And to think that this was all over, like Vince Russo had beef with JBL and wanted to see him get his ass kicked. That and admittedly so. He says, yeah, that's what it was all about. And when he goes down is when we'll get to that point. That was like, oh, great, mission accomplished.
But it still has to go on.
Jim Cornette wanted to murder him because he understood the price that they'd pay. Like, in this matter of weeks, they ruined guys' careers forever. They were never going to be the same. Some were gone shortly after.
Right.
It was just terrible all the way around. And I look at this and I think back that how did they let it get this far? That somebody didn't raise a hand and say, it's all well and good, but have we considered what the downside of this could be? How not only it could impact these guys individually, but how is it going to reflect back on us? Because we've created this whole thing that these guys are these, incredible, tough people who can whip anybody's ass. And then, no, there are people that are better than they are. And, I also think back to Hacksaw Jim Duggan used to told me that, when he was with Mid-South and in some of these other small territories, the promoters really, they like these guys going out in the community and getting into, altercations, but you better not lose. And if you get knocked out in a bar or if you lose a fight, don't bother coming to the arena because you're no good to me anymore. So, and that was real. So you had guys that were working backstage there that certainly knew how this all worked, and yet they let it go forward. And I don't know how in the world they ever did it. It's just amazing to me.
So I am going to agree with everything you're saying. But for me as a viewer at the time, this wasn't the way that we sometimes look at this event, sometimes, like a lot of people do, and we're going to do it today too, is they look at it as like, can you believe it? Like, it was like a spotlight. It was a small little segment on Monday Night Raw because I had Austin, you get DX, you got Kane, you got Undertaker, you got Mankind, you got The Nation, The Rock. There was so much more. And like, I hope people understand if you were watching at the time. This was just like a little segment in the show, but somehow it ruined so many careers. And that's
Yeah.
the shocking part of it. A 16-man tournament. And you have to go sign up for this, by the way. It's not like they're just picking you like, hey, you want to be in this thing? If you get in it, you're gonna get $5,000 to $10,000 per night. That's extra in your pocket, right?
Mhm.
Oh, cool. 3 1-minute rounds. Now, this is the weird thing. It's a combination of boxing and I guess shoot fighting in wrestling.
Well, basically MMA, I
Right.
guess you could call it.
True. Before it became the juggernaut, it became. Here's a scoring though. This is the big part I think is confusing. Is you have most punches in a round equals 5 points. A takedown gets 5 points. A knockdown 10 points, and a KO automatic victory.
Mhm.
It was funny when you watch this tournament back. Some people were there just swinging, and other people realize all I have to do is keep taking you down, and I get more points. Like if you miss me, you don't get a point. If I take you down, you get points. So, but it's such a weird concept. Like we said earlier, in Vince Russo, let's bring that up. You said it. Vince Russo creates this tournament because he's so pissed off at JBL saying like, well, if this was real, I could beat up everybody. I'm not disputing that claim, but that's why we don't fight for real. We've seen it with Bulldogs and the Rougeaus. We've seen shit hit the fan. It's not good for your work environment. So is it crazy to think that Vince McMahon greenlit this idea by Vince Russo, but really in the darkness of the idea is, I want to make JBL look like a piece of shit on TV.
Yeah, and I'm sure that that's not the way he presented it.
But, well, I said that's why in the darkness later, of the pitch.
Yeah, but it was revealed later, and he openly admits that was his driving force for selling this thing to them. But you mentioned these matches, whatever you want to call them, these bouts, that they weren't received really well because they were boring. They would actually had chants of people in the crowd chanting, boring, boring, because as you said, a lot of times you get tired up. And if anybody has boxed before, and even going a minute or two, I did a lot of training, just for staying in shape. But I used to spar, and man, I mean, you go in there and you do 2 minutes, 3 minutes, my God, you're blown up. Like, I don't know what kind of shape you're in. If you really are going at it, it's crazy how much it takes out of you to sit in there and just keep throwing punches at people. And you could see that was another thing that it revealed, that here you see these guys, you never saw them because they knew how to pace themselves in a match or whatever. Right. You're not, doing the kind of exertion that you have to do. But when it's an all-out fight or flight, kind of situation, man, your body is at peak performance. And you could see, I mean, these were 1 minute rounds, Steve. And if you go back and watch these, and some of these guys, and they come out and like you said, they're just and
swinging.
It's not disciplined, it's just roundhouse swing. They're not keeping, like they say keep your elbows to your side and you're punching straight ahead for the best. They're just like, slap fight, like girl fight, kind of, but then you could see like after like 50 seconds in, like those guys were like leaning on the rope, like, and that was another thing that it exposed to these guys. You're like, what the hell, man? I thought this was a finely tuned athlete.
Yeah, you don't look like you're in shape.
Dogging it there. Looks like he needs a bucket, and that was another thing. But these guys were not. They knew that discipline, you see a wrestling match and everything is clean and the moves, because that's what they do. That's their living. But when you're fighting and you do not have those disciplined skills, it's just all out warfare. And the smart guys figured out, get him on the ground.
Yeah.
Dan Severn, who was a very skilled fighter, he said, I had no intention of I didn't care if I landed a punch. I knew that if I can get these guys down, especially when they're that big. Most of them are very top heavy because they've got the big muscles up here. Legs go out easy, and that was his plan. But he knew what really a joke what it was, and especially see these guys that came from real backgrounds like that, real fighting backgrounds, like that had been wrestlers or had mixed martial artists and that kind of thing, and they understood what that was all about. And a background in professional wrestling certainly makes you one of the most skilled athletes on the planet, but that doesn't mean that those fighting skills or whatever are going to translate. What you're going to get in a bar, you're going to get a guy in an arm bar, or you're going to be able to get him in that headlock, and then, lock it in,
The
it's
abdominal stretch. Come on,
yeah,
hold my
right.
hand.
Yeah. Suplex, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But
Body slam, maybe.
yeah, okay. But what I'm saying here
Yeah, of
is that
course.
these guys, for the vast majority of them, were not skilled fighters. Even the Godfather, who was, came from the mean streets, managed to strip clubs and, and knew all about how to take care of people. That still doesn't that type of fighting. And you've seen other videos sometimes where the guy, the street fighter versus the boxer, he, wanders into the gym and says, I can kick your ass. And within 30 seconds, it's over, because these guys know what they're doing. And when you don't, man, you are a fish, and there's no water. It's just not good.
No, you have some great athletes in this though too. But you have like Steve Blackman. Ken Shamrock isn't in the tournament, even though he's in the WWF at the time. Dan Severn, as you brought up. But one of the biggest stories that comes from the Brawl for All, that is, try saying that 3 times fast. Jim Ross, according to everyone who's ever spoken about the Brawl for All, suggests that he wanted Dr. Death Steve Williams to win the tournament. They brought him into the WWF. And I'll be honest, again, as a viewer at this time in my life, didn't care for him. I found him boring. I didn't find him to be entertaining. Years ago, obviously, he was a different athlete. And at this point in time, he wasn't for me as a viewer. You're saying suck it and giving the middle fingers. I was interested. Yeah. And so he gets put in this tournament, but he doesn't win the tournament. And are you shocked that kind of that story has never been dropped once? Like, there, even if JR says even the dark side of the ring, well, no, that's not true. Everybody else has said it's true. Yeah. So who's lying?
Well, if people know, Jim, he is a huge Sooner fan, of Oklahoma, and was a mark certainly for that team, and was a mark for Steve Williams. He was a big athlete, and from there. And so there was a big connection there. But, he wanted, this was his guy. This was his boy. He wanted him to do well. And in a lot of ways, and Williams talked later that, he knew it, but he was hoping he would benefit by it. But it went too far, to the point where, he said, I'm a cold-hearted heel. I'm a villain. That's who I am. I, hurt people. And here they're trying to make me some baby face and then have Jim Ross as my manager. Like, it was, that was just bad from the start. So maybe his whole career there might have been different had he come in without that. But by the time he got to the WWE, he'd been around a while. It's not like he was just new, kid off the street. And so, anybody that's a professional athlete and spent their life doing that, they'll tell you at some point, no matter how good a shape you are in, you start getting up into those late 30s years, unless you're a freak like Tom Brady and these, some of these other examples, and no discredit to what we see some of these professional wrestlers doing today, that well into their 40s and still being able to perform at peak. But one of the first things that starts to go is your legs. That no matter what you do, the two things you count on the most to keep you upright, that starts to go. And when you start to lose that 20-year difference between, if you're stepping in a ring to somebody who's 20 years younger than you, they already have a big advantage over you physically, because like I said, no matter how great a shape you're in, how do you compare? You can't change time. It's just something that is going to happen. So my point of it is being him stepping into the ring with somebody like Bart Gunn,
who was much younger than him.
Yeah, had
He
something
was
to prove.
already at a disadvantage, and even though we haven't gotten there yet because I know that as this tournament progressed, going through the different rounds there, but how everybody was thinking, oh yeah, Williams going to take care of this kid.
Yeah.
Well, it certainly didn't turn out that way, but physicality certainly had something to do with it, and I'm kind of surprised that they didn't really take that into account to say, this young buck here, man, he's got that younger chassis, and he'd already proven that he could destroy people. The fact that they just kind of took it lightly in a sense, Williams said that, I should have been more serious about it. And even, says the same thing. It's funny. I love the way, I love him the way he always talks about, I was smoking dope, smoking cannabis, as he says, but I was always smoking cannabis,
Right.
In fact, like what he could do and perform, I don't know. It's beyond me but he's a different human being. But even he said, I go in there and I didn't think I'm out back smoking and he's doing calisthenics, getting warmed up.
He's working, and Bart Gunn's working out, and I'm back here smoking. The Godfather was backstage smoking weed, which is funny because you hear all these stories about people getting fired for smoking weed, and he's just out blind, like in the back of the building smoking weed. Like, I'm sorry, I've heard people like fired for that shit, like Sherry Martel, like other people like that. But
he's the Godfather, you can do whatever.
Yeah, I get he's friends with the Undertaker, so I guess you can do whatever you want when you're friends with the dead man. He'll bury you alive. But the Dr. Death narrative has always been around, as this was supposed to be his tournament. The design was to bring him into the WWF, a fresh opponent for Stone Cold Steve Austin, because at the time he was just plowing through. He beat Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 14. He fought Dude Love back-to-back pay-per-views. Lost to Kane, got it back from Kane. Fought Undertaker. Like, he was running out of opponents by the time the Brawl For All was kind of going on in the summertime of 1998. And this Brawl For All tournament, like I said, it fit in the narrative of, we got people saying suck it, we got people doing middle fingers, we got beer baths, we got dead men, we got pyrotechnics shooting out of your hands. Like, it all fit the narrative of, this is the Attitude Era, this is a part of the show, and if you like it, you don't like it. Because it was crazy to think that we're going to have all these wrestlers get into a tournament and shoot fight them. And so let's talk about some of these matches, because this is where injuries start right away. So Steve Blackman and Mark Marrow, they fight. Mark Marrow, he's a notorious boxer. Golden Gloves. Steve Blackman, martial arts. Okay, well, Blackman wins because he just keeps doing takedowns. And it turns out that Blackman gets injured in this, so Mark Marrow advances. So we already have an injury. Already.
Yeah. First clue. This ain't working very well.
Nope. And you brought up earlier when the boring chance, Bradshaw takes on Mark Canterbury, who used to be Henry O. Godwin. And at this point, he was a serious contender. It's sloppy. It's crazy. This is the whole thing. And this is where the boring chants start for this tournament. Again, we're not off to a good start. We have one injury, and we have fans immediately rejecting the concept. And earlier, I want to bring up too, is this is 16 wrestlers that weren't doing much in the WWF at this time. So when you're given this opportunity, would you like $5,000? Would you like 10 grand? Would you like to win this opportunity? Maybe fight Steve Austin? You're like, holy shit. Yeah, because I'm not even in the mid card. I'm like below it a little bit. And all these wrestlers, from Darren Drozdov to Mark Marrow to Bradshaw to Mark Canterbury, these men were given like a golden opportunity. So even if it's a bad idea, if you were these people, I'm guessing you would say yes, because if you do win, you're sort of maybe a made man, right?
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, these guys were, they weren't desperate. Let's not say that, but many of them were in the situation where their wheels are spinning. They're not going anywhere. They'd been told things about where they might go with their career and all this. And then but these guys been around long enough. They see the writing on the wall that, okay, this is where it's going to stay. And I can ride it out as long as I can. And then it's going to be back to the independents and pick up some work wherever I can. Maybe I can go to WCW, but they're all at a point where, I got to do something. Something's got to happen. And as you mentioned, these guys are also probably not making a ton of money. Mm-hmm. They may be out there working some of the shows, but if you're not on that in that A team that A tour, it's especially if you're a mid carder, you're at the B or the C shows, man, it's tough, and you're paying your own expenses. We've mentioned before, and
Right.
so somebody's saying, yeah, if you do this, you're going to get just to go in there. They're 3 1-minute rounds, and you're going to get $5,000 and as you go, or 10 grand, whatever I don't know what they were paying.
Yeah.
But the big payoff is you're going to get 90 or 100 grand, and you're going to get this push with Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, what do I have to lose?
Right.
I've been.
I'm a tough guy.
I've been in fights before. Even if somehow I don't win, I'll be okay. And I just made 5-10 grand. So sure, I'm in. And Bruce was given the task to go and convince these guys, and I'm sure that's what the pitch was. He knew and Bruce too. He knew this was not a good idea, but that was, as he would say, marching orders that he got. It was his job. So he goes out and he sells these guys on it, and I'm sure as this thing started to tank, man, he was probably thinking like, oh my God, what have we done? But it was his job to go out there and do that. Nobody held a gun to these guys' heads.
Mm-hmm.
They put the carrot out there, but none of them had to agree to go in there. They probably had that idea of like, well, if I don't do it, then I'll probably be gone. It was probably one of those things too. So, it was really a tough situation for these guys, but I don't think anybody really expected for it to go as badly as it did.
Right.
Because, even back then, the whole thing about the CTE and, people suffering brain damage from these concussions wasn't really as public as it is today in any sense. But, anytime, regardless of what it is that hits your noggin, but you lose consciousness, that scar is going to be on the brain forever. Right. So, regardless, even if you make it through without losing, the lights going out, still bad news. And any time that you go down without it being
with your hands,
or that I always land this way. This is how I protect this part of my body. Well, you don't know if some guy's coming in with a shoot to take your legs out, which happened to these guys. There's a big chance they could take your knee out, ACL, something, whatever can happen, or there's a ring post back there too. If they take you back far enough and they drive you into that, and you're not ready, how do these guys know how to go into a turnbuckle? Well, if somebody's purposely throwing your body and they don't care where it goes, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and they did.
Yeah, and it's interesting too from that dark side of the ring where we're informed that the matchups are at random. So they put names in a hat, they pick them out. I'm going to call bullshit. Even Bart Gunn said that was bullshit because, for instance, all right, so Savio Vega fought Brackus, whatever. Savio wins Brackus. He was out of place in the Attitude Era. I don't know what the hell he was doing there. He just looked jacked. There's the random matchup. Hawk versus Darren Drozdov, who had a storyline already existing in the WWF. It was Hawk being upset with Darren, trying to replace him in the Legion of Doom 2000 group. So you're telling me this is random? Also, Bob Holly, and Bart Gunn are tag team partners. They get matched up as well.
Yeah.
I don't believe it, Mr. Mooney. Yeah. I don't believe those are at random.
I agree with you. Even though they could sit there and say, no, it's all random and we're just stepping away from this and letting it happen. Bullshit. That's not what happened. And then as we got into this and there were some changes of who was, they're probably like Vince are like, we got to save this disaster, at least get some decent matchups, so maybe we'll get something good in there, something. So, yeah, but come on. He couldn't, it's like, Vince couldn't keep his hands off the XFL. It was like nothing. He's always had to have his hands in it.
I know.
And this was no exception. I mean, I know, that he had his influence on what was going to happen here.
Like Hawk and Darren Drozdov, dude, you have a storyline already built in there. Of course that's going to be on there. And don't want to see two tag team partners fight. And Bart Gunn and Bob Holly were doing not much at this time. They were the new Midnight Express. The new. When you put the new in front of anything, it's not a good sign. So that's what they're doing. They're doing nothing. They're fighting on Saturday nights at 1 o'clock in the morning on a show called Shotgun Saturday Night. They're obviously going to do this. But Bob Holly, as long as I've known the stories of him, he's known as a backstage bully or someone maybe who respects wrestling too much and takes it out on the younger people. So they understand the dues that need to be paid. So it depends how you look at training, I guess. But he has beaten the shit out of so many people on Tough Enough and in the ring. But here, he gets beaten by Bart Gunn. And Bart Gunn in that Dark Side of the Ring said that after I beat him, we still have to get in the car together and drive to the next town and stay in the hotel together. Talk about awkward.
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't pretty, man. That was, that was a slugfest, and you could see the aftermath of it. Yeah. I don't know, I don't know how you worked that one out. You're like, dude, we had to do what we had to do, basically. And we both stepped in there, and it wasn't like, we knew it was a shoot.
It gets rough. And next up, we have JR's boy, Dr. Death Steve Williams, taking on the one-eyed man, Pierre. And that's another running gag of like, how do we get Dr. Death going? Have him fight the guy with one eye. And JR constantly on commentaries putting over Dr. Death Steve Williams. And this begins the heat that starts building in this tournament for Dr. Death Steve Williams to either be defeated or win in the end. Dan Severn versus The Godfather is an interesting pair as well. Severn wins, but then drops out of the tournament. So The Godfather keeps moving on in the tournament.
Right.
But,
well,
did Dan just get out because he realized this is bad news?
Yeah, I think, he just said that I don't want to be part of this, which, you have to respect people like that, he didn't know what it might cost him by doing that. But I think he realized the danger in there. And also that, they're going to get guys hurt here. This guy had come from his roots were buried in, mortal combat with other human beings. And, he quickly realized, you've got these amateurs here. And if you're not in there in the ring with a professional, not only is there danger of that person getting hurt, but also they can hurt you because they're not trained professionals. They can do something really stupid. And so I think that, at that point, he's like, he knew he did interviews after that and felt that, the fix was in. And I just didn't
really?
I didn't want to really, well, I think he realized that, that this was not good, that, that these guys were going to, when they stepped into that ring, it was no holds barred, but at the same time, he didn't want to be a part of that, and ridiculous, even if he would have thought he could have won it all. But, he said, I knew I could go in there. I wouldn't have to throw a punch. I could just sit there all day and take these guys down and win the points, and it would be really pretty boring television. But as we've seen, a lot of times, some of these martial artists and these old MMA, where these guys were just skilled at taking people down, and they get them in there, and then what did they do? And then they get a
like an arm bar
there with a guy submission, and it's tapping. Like, boy, that was exciting. But you know what? Guy won.
He won. $50 for a pay-per-view. Right.
It doesn't make for great television.
No.
So, that was the danger there. But, all the way around, just like watching these things some people like watching car wrecks, but if you're a professional wrestling fan and you're used to seeing some storyline play out and things, you're expecting them to, put on a show, entertain me. And when it's in there and it's just this mass, it's like soup of, just everything going on. And maybe there were a few people that enjoyed it, but I think overall that, they realized early on that, they're not buying this stuff. They're not enjoying it.
No. And then it gets more controversial because Dan Severn drops out. So I'm thinking, like you just said, like, he's so good that the WWE, there's so many stories about it. One is like, oh, the WWE was like, well, we know you'll win and we don't want you to win. So can we,
Yeah,
you
but then
just
why'd they
leave?
let him in the first place then? You know,
Because
it's
they probably
just,
didn't expect him to beat the Godfather. They're like, oh, the Godfather, I've seen him in bar fights. He'll beat him. And Dennis Evans like, dude, it's based in points, not being a tough badass. If I just keep taking you down, I win. That's my thoughts on that. But then it gets controversial because clearly now people are screwing with each other because Bradshaw fights Mark Merrow in the second round. Clearly, Mark Merrow wins in punches and points. It's a draw. They have another round. Mark Merrow clearly wins again, but nope. Bradshaw is technically the winner according to the score, and he moves on to the next round. So this clearly is either, in my opinion, Vince Russo going like, oh, you think you're gonna do well? And someone was stepping in like, no. Bradshaw versus somebody is more money than Mark Merrow versus somebody.
yeah, maybe that's a good point. I hadn't really thought of it that way. And I think that if Mero had gone on further, because he was a real boxer,
Right.
it probably would have been more entertaining. But like you said, no matter what, they could have probably done 5 or 6 rounds, and somehow JBL would have come out on top because, um, they had these judges. Who were these judges? They weren't real boxing judges. Like most of these guys didn't have
Yes, thank you.
experience anyway. Do they have somebody, people in the back or what? Like, okay. And so how do they even know how to score?
A
I mean,
made up
can you
thing.
watch? I've watched a lot of boxing, but I couldn't sit there. I couldn't tell you how many punches. I can say, yeah, the guy got more punches in that round than that other guy.
Yes.
But to be able to really determine that, unless it's just so one-sided,
Right.
you have to really know about. You have to know the sport. You have to really understand it to decipher a lot of it. I mean, takedowns are sure he got him, and the guy fell on the ground there, but. Was it legit? Was it a
Right.
legit takedown? Was it, I mean,
Well,
there are standards for judging.
and
So
real judging, yeah.
where are they coming up with this? They're just like, I
The
wanted to
rule
look
book.
down there and I thought I'd see like a box of crayons, and they're just like drawing pictures and then who's winning this one? You know?
Yeah. I thought there was a shoot. Not anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Unless you knock the guy out, you have no idea how we're going to score this one. But if the guy can't function, then okay, we really can't do anything about that. And that was the story with Bart Gunn. That that guy had a meat hook on him, and when he really connected with power, and it's funny because people really didn't know, because there's a lot of big, tough, strong guys, but. He really packed a punch.
Yeah.
We found out.
In the next round, this is where it all fall apart for Dr. Death Steve Williams because he fights Bart Gunn. And again, at this point in time, Bart Gunn used to be one half of the Smoking Guns with Billy Gunn. Billy Gunn is now badass Billy Gunn with the Road Dogg Jesse James and New Age Outlaws, Indie Acts, one of the coolest things going at the time.
Yeah.
Bart Gunn, he's still wearing like the blue jeans he was wearing in the cowboy boots that he was in the Smoking Guns with. He's doing nothing. He hasn't done anything in a long, long time. So being in this tournament, beating his tag team partner as the new Midnight Express, well, then he takes down Dr. Death Steve Williams. And I believe in Vince Russo, I remember in that Dark Side, he was like so happy to see that happen because he wanted to shut up JR because everyone was thinking about, oh, it's JR's boy. I hope he gets knocked out. And even Bart Gunn's even told, like, hey, like, I'm going to knock you out tonight by Dr. Death. Bart Gunn's like, oh, really? I'm going to fuck you up. And boom, he beats him. It's incredible.
Yeah,
it's a Cinderella story.
Yeah, but and the bottom line of this is, again, that this is personal. It's just kind of unfathomable that this just kept going because, as you said, that like with Russo, it was a vendetta against JBL, and then wants to shut JR up at the cost of what? I mean, look at the damage done,
Right.
and regardless of what you thought of Doctor's Death, Steve Williams. They had plans for this guy, and we know that that machine can make or break people, can make them stars or not.
Mm-hmm.
And if they would have gotten behind him from the beginning and not have him really start his run there in this tournament, which killed him, literally, he was done from that point on, regardless of whatever they tried to do with JR and the whole making him a baby face and getting revenge on Bart Gunn. Wah, wah, wah. It just didn't work. But that was a pivotal moment. I could imagine what it was like backstage. I'm sure everybody was glued to those monitors.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, when bam, like when he gets up and then bam, and then he's just like gone. Out, cold. Can you imagine what the reaction was like backstage? Like, you could imagine the boys were like, oh my God. But worse for that is I could imagine Vince and everyone else there that wanted this guy to go all the way here, and then maybe we have like a really good run with Steve Austin because he's the baddest ass in the WWE, and that done over that. And as Jim Cornette says in that episode, and folks, really, you check it out. And
so good.
Dark Side of the Ring, they did a really great job at kind of going over the whole thing. But as Jim Cornette says in that he sees Russo backstage, he wants to strangle him, and Vince doesn't get it. Like what you just did, you cost the company millions, what they could have made maybe with this guy. You've already got this trail of disaster leading up to even this point with guys hurt and not ever going to be the same. You've tarnished all of their careers, their gimmicks.
Mm-hmm.
They'll never be looked at the same way. These guys that lost in this ridiculous tournament, they'll never be able to live that down with the fans. You know that, man. They remember forever every detail. And this was the pivotal moment of it, that you, for your own personal gain or your own personal satisfaction, you just killed this what could have been a great run, cost the company all this money, and you killed this guy. He was, and for sure, he never ever was the same after that. And I'm sure even that day, even though they did stuff afterwards, I'm sure Vince was like, well, write that one off the list.
Right.
Because,
tax write-off.
Well, and that he knew, what do I do with this guy now? He's laying completely flat out on the ring. And and then you've got the camera in his face, and you just see the eyes are not.
Well, you see, like he spits out his mouth guard when he hits the ground. He hits the ground, and he just spits it out. You're like, what the hell, man? Yeah.
It was. So that kind of, that was the kind of the summation of what a disaster this thing was.
Now you're
zoomed
in to get on you. This happened last time we did a podcast together. You get too animated.
But the Godfather, he says, he suffered, after this from a concussion. When you're out, you have had a concussion. And he said he wasn't right for weeks. Steve Williams was out for months.
Right.
We had a terrible quad injury. And so it was just all the way around terrible. But it really, I think, did do serious damage. And it was a bad idea from the start going in. That when anybody ever thought that this was going to be a great idea and maybe something they could do every year or so, just terribly wrong. And that's kind of the end result of it. And then what do you do? Now you've got Bart Gunn, who wins this whole thing. And okay, now what? I hope he got the $100,000.
Well, he knocked out Bradshaw too, so you got to remember that part of the narrative. Like he knocked out the Godfather in the semifinals, then he knocked out JBL, the guy that this tournament was all made around to make look like he's not as tough, according to Vince Russo, and that's who Bart Gunn knocks out. Yeah. To me, he's like, like Vince Russo is like, yeah, we did it, but everyone else is Savio Vega has a neck injury, and all these people are hurt in the background, and Vince Russo's like, we did it, guys, we did it. Like, what did you do? Like, I love Vince Russo, but what did that do for anybody?
It was awful. It was not ill-conceived. And I don't think, from seeing interviews with him, he doesn't really have a lot of regret over it. That it was an experiment and it failed. Okay, didn't work, but hey, and as it really was at that time, and you touched on this, that it was, in a sense, they were doing reality television or trying to come as close to it as they could.
Jerry
That
Springer,
whole
man.
Springer type, anything goes, confrontations, sells. And of course, that have always been true with the WWE, but pushing it to the point where, I mean, look at some of the stuff they were doing then. The titillation and everything else that went with that just over the line, and being able to flip people off and, riding that wave. So it's not really surprising that that we had something like this happen, because let's just keep pushing that envelope. But it's unfortunate that it wasn't so like one event, one night, or got it over with. But they had to do this for weeks. But overall, just really not good. Not a good episode in the history. It's like a dark cloud over this one, and I'm sure that when people that were connected to it hear people talking about it, they kind of shudder.
I got to interview Mark Merrow, a couple of those guys, and I always asked about the Brawl for All. Just been like, so what were your thoughts heading in? And it's just interesting to hear everyone's perspectives. But for you, I want to ask this question because this narrative still exists. The fans, or say something happens that gets someone popular, like Bart Gunn wins this entire tournament, so we could make him a star because he won this tournament. So now we have momentum. They do nothing with him. This has happened over the years with so many wrestlers where someone's like red hot, but the WWE or whatever organization will not pull the trigger because that person isn't part of the plan. It just so happened the fans are behind this person, or you so happen to win a shoot tournament. Well, that's great for you, but guess what? We still don't have shit for you. To me, that's bad business. What do you think? We have all these dead bodies behind us. Can't we move forward with the one that succeeded?
Yeah, but also let's think back to why were these guys in this position anyway? They didn't have it.
True.
Right? And so why do you think that, Billy Gunn went on to do what he did and be with other people? If they saw the magic in that original tag team, they would have kept it going.
Yeah.
So they do have a guy here, and they're like, okay, how do we capitalize on it? And they're like, he's just, he didn't have it before. Just because he knocked out a bunch of people and he won this thing doesn't mean he's going to have, a big shot here. And so I think that, as we will talk about in WrestleMania, that even, everybody associated with it felt that was retribution for what he did.
Yeah.
But
all right,
at the same time, they probably were racking their brains like, what are we going to do? What is a run with Steve Austin going to look like?
With Bart Gunn.
Right. What do we do with them? Where do we generate the heat here? They can make anything work, but maybe they're thinking, well, we're going to go in there and we're going to put him up against a real fighter. And if, God forbid, he could knock Butterbean out, well, maybe we really do have something here. And then then we do have to do something. Or he gets destroyed and we're done. He had a shot.
I think that whole thing,
and that whole thing was another disaster because you get in a real fighter, and Butterbean was not Mike Tyson. Butterbean wasn't Larry Holmes. He was kind of this comical kind of a fighter. I'm not saying that he wasn't a legit guy that could take people out
like a showman. I forget what the term would be like.
He was kind of this. He was this big. Wasn't cut or anything. He didn't look like a boxer. His trunks are up underneath his boobs there, and
I think Jim Cornette called him a potato with arms.
Okay, yeah, and so the fact that he goes in there and what did it last? 38 seconds before he hits him?
I think I have it. Oh,
something like that.
Yeah, it's like 35 seconds.
35 seconds. Okay. How does that make the rest of the guys look like? If Bart Gunn goes in that ring, that whole run there, and he's knocking out the biggest, baddest guys that you can even imagine in the WWE. I mean, come on. Godfather, JBL, all these guys that he took out. And then he goes in the ring against Butterbean, and Butterbean takes him apart in 35 seconds. And Butterbean talks about it to say, he went in there and he, Gunn trained for this. He actually got a boxing coach and everything. And Butterbean says, if he would have gone in there and just tried to, brawl with me like it was a bar fight, I probably would not have had a good a chance. If he would have gotten him on the ground, I doubt Butterbean was real quick at getting up.
He was like actually trying to box.
Yeah, he wanted in there and he goes in and box him. And he goes, and I hit him one time and I saw it and I rattled him like, oh, this is over. You can see, like I said, when you see the legs go, it's okay. Now, where do I want it? Do I want it here? Where do I want maybe here? Where should I put this next one that's going to end this thing? And he claims that, he asked Vince, I'm saying he was maybe willing to work with him, but at the same time, and Vince is like, do what you do, So he goes out there and did what he did.
In his head. You just see Bart Gunn's head.
Right. But think about that, Steve. Him doing that, how did that make the rest of the WWE superstars look that were in that tournament? Like, would maybe, Butterbean could have gone in there with, tie the one hand behind the back, tie his ankles together, and he's got the one left. I mean, how bad does that make the rest of them look? So it was just the farce of it all at that point just proved to everybody, okay, they're just choreographed dancers out there. And when it comes down to real fighting, you put him up against a guy like Butterbean, and he can't even, it's over in seconds. Okay, now we know who they really are. They're actors.
Right. The biggest argument I have with that is Savio Vegas, I love all these wrestlers, I respect them all, but when suddenly Darren Drozdov or Savio Vegas missing from Monday Night Raw, I wasn't caring as a viewer, but it's sad to think as an adult, you're like, holy shit, all these people couldn't pay their bills anymore, they were at home, they were hurt because of this tournament, and you set up, listen, this is retribution for Bart Gunn, 100%. There's no doubt about that in my mind, because we have seen over the years, there's no evidence, but Vince McMahon is a man who likes to get revenge on people or embarrass them because that's just what gets him off. It makes him happy, I guess. And he's done it to so many people over the years, and we've seen it. No evidence, but it's out there. And this seems like Bart Gunn won something he wasn't supposed to. And Vince is like, I will use my money and sources to make him look like a fool because he made us look like fools. And JR is angry about Dr. Death.
But, regardless of that, that's another thing that I just don't get, because no matter what Vince was thinking, Russo may have had his own ideas about it, but the fact that Vince wasn't able to go, you know what?
Bad idea.
I'm pissed that he did that to my guy, and now I'm going to destroy him. And not thinking, well, okay, if he gets his head knocked off in seconds, how's that going to make the rest of that whole stupid-ass tournament look like? All these guys that were in it. To not think of that,
I don't think Vince thinks of yesterday. I think Vince thinks of always
I know,
tomorrow.
but they had days and days and days to think about this. And, Pat Patterson and all these other guys that are there, whatever influence they have, guys, they did have people there. They had other, agents behind the scenes, and not everybody was a sycophant. People did say things to Vince and be able to say, boss, you ought to really think about this. The fact that even when it came down to that, and if that's how the story goes, that Vince said, we're gonna take care of this guy. We're gonna show him. And not think of the repercussions of, okay, what is that going to make everybody else look like? I don't understand it. That, to me, when it came down to business, you're thinking, okay, we got to make this guy look like he
he's legit. Like he is a, I mean, think about that. The storyline here. What is the natural in him? He's going to go out there. I'm going to have him against this big time boxer, and he stands toe to toe with him through, they do 3 rounds or whatever, and it comes down to whatever.
Or like, oh, so you're talking about making it like predetermined, where we're gonna have 3 rounds and we're gonna, like, in the end, Bart Gunn like passes out from pain or something, and then he loses, but he's actually still a winner. Like, are you talking about something on the lines of predetermined?
Compelling here. I mean, what? They can't make it a work at this point. Like, it's Wrestlemania.
Right.
They can do whatever the hell they want. And no, we got to stay true to that it's a shoot, because what? Someone's going to find out and call us on it?
Let me say something. The same Wrestlemania we're talking about with Butterbean and Bart Gunn is the same Wrestlemania the Big Boss Man is hung by the Undertaker on Hell in a Cell. So just letting you know, this is the same event.
Right. So if it's true, if what Butterbean says, in the interview that he talks about it, saying that, and more than once, he said it to more than one in one sit down, that they told him, no, you do what you do. We go in there and do exactly what you do when you step into the ring.
So sad for Bart Gunn.
And it sounded, and the way you made it sound like, I was willing to work with him. I mean, he's been in match, they could say, make it look good, give him a couple of rounds, or, and then you can take him out. Because this was not sanctioned by the the WBA, or it was an exhibition. You do whatever the hell you want with it. There was no belt no title on the line, nothing. So
I believe the theory of Butterbean kind of saying these things, because this isn't the first time Butterbean and the WWF has worked together. He's been in the audience randomly on Raws, but he also had a boxing match against Mark Merrow December of '97 on pay-per-view as well. So they've already established a working relationship, as Butterbean is a marquee name on television and sports. So they've worked with him. So I'm not surprised Butterbean has said, yeah, I'm willing to do whatever you want me to do, because you pay me to be here, and I'll do what you want.
And maybe they could have saved some credibility in the sense from wrestling viewpoint. I'm not talking about.
Oh, of course.
But that here, nobody can deny whatever they witnessed before going to this tournament was a shoot. I mean, we saw guys, really, really hurt. Mm-hmm. You can't, you don't fake that knockout, You see a guy when they're on the ground and they do that, that stiff arm thing, or
get really close to my face,
switching, and then their eyes are, they don't even, like JBL, that close up of him, you could say he wasn't there. He had no idea what was going on. He had the smelling salts on it. He's not even flinching. He was just, so
it was worth it.
They could have gone in WrestleMania and say, okay, look, we did all that. We did that. Now we can really pay it off and have this, great boxing match, Rocky kind of, situation, and save some semblance of this, that it is that these guys are badass. And the fact that, those guys, maybe they weren't as tough as Bart Gunn in that 3 minutes that they were in the ring. But, this guy is one tough badass that he can go toe to toe with this professional fighter, and he can last. Maybe at the end he didn't win, but he went the distance, or, and it was just, could have had juiced him, everything. I mean, like all kinds of
go all in. Yeah. All right.
I don't know.
Man, you're going like Rocky 1, right? You're like the
right.
ending.
But I mean, but I'm just thinking from as far as an entertainment standpoint here, and then saving something that was a complete disaster. Maybe it could have brought something to it, and who knows, out of it, maybe they could have done something with Bart Gunn, and he could have gone on as the fighter. The guy that some run.
He doesn't have to fight Steve Austin. He can go fight Savio Vega and Darren Drozdov. He doesn't have to knock out Austin.
I mean, you could have done so many things. They could have had where do a whole thing with the people from the crowd at some big events, whatever. They come in and challenge Bart Gunn, and it could have been a whole.
Where were you?
Could have been a whole work, and then and maybe launched a few more careers through it. Kind of what they did with Hillbilly Jim and all these other guys that, that started their careers basically from the crowd, how that old kind of
of
run
course.
there. But instead, everybody suffered for it. There was no positive gains from it. I don't know if there is one. I'd like to hear it, because I don't know what one positive thing that came out of that whole tournament.
You make a really good point where who are the winners of this tournament? It wasn't Bart Gunn.
There's no winners.
It was nobody.
WWE, no.
Butterbean got a payday to show up to execute Bart Gunn's future. Yeah. And then Bart Gunn, after WrestleMania 15, doing nothing as well, eventually let go. And look at the tournament, though. Like, Savio Vega, injured, neck injury. Brackus did nothing after this either. Darren Drozdown gets punched in the face. JBL knocked out. It was like an endless amount of injuries for what? To show that JBL wasn't the toughest guy in the locker room in a predetermined sport. It's not fake. It's predetermined. And it's sad that this is the way it has to go, where we spend all these resources, all this money on our television program, and it goes to nothing. Absolutely nothing. And it's sad. So me and you were texting before, and you said, this is the worst professional wrestling idea that ever existed. Do you stand by your point?
Oh yeah, I think there was certainly others, but this is up there. This is the Hall of Fame.
Oh, the Mount Rushmore of bad ideas.
Of bad storyline, bad ideas.
Yeah.
This is right up there because of the damage that it caused all the way around. What it did to some of these professional wrestlers' careers, what it did to the WWE. It was just, everything about it. There was no positives that came out of it, except a lesson learned to don't ever do it again.
There you go. So there was a lesson learned. Don't do this shit again. All right. Yeah. I like it. Well, again, thank you guys so much for listening and watching us talk about the Brawl For All right here on Prime Time with Sean Mooney. I'll challenge you to a fight later. Takedowns. That's how I'm going to win. Takedowns, folks. Punching. But I'm Steve Fall. He's Sean Mooney. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.